CMJ's Epic Quest. 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 CMJ's Epic Quest.
Everyone, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. I am Justin, and joining alongside me is...
Hey, Stadial! It's me, I'm here.
Late, per the norm, and letting your dog out.
Better late than never. It's fashionably
True.
late, thank you.
Well, I had to remind you, so that's okay.
But I'm still here. You wouldn't have reminded me I wasn't here at all.
That's kind of the point, yes.
I looked at my phone, and my husband was like, somebody's calling. And I was like, what the heck? And I kept looking, and I said D&J's Epic Quest, and I was just like, oh my god, the podcast. No.
Yeah, I didn't know how the Twitter phone call thing would work. I'm like, well, fuck it, we'll try it. And then I tried calling Justin. And nothing showed up for him at all.
No,
So,
it popped up like a normal call. It wasn't even like a Facebook Messenger call. It was like a normal phone call just popped up. And that's why I kept
weird.
looking. I was like, what does that say? And I was like, oh my god.
fucking scammers. Now they're calling when I'm trying to eat.
they're so persistent. Before we get started in today's episode, we'd like to take a moment to thank and recognize Silverstone's books. Check out their website at silverstonesbooks.com, where they have a large selection of sci-fi, fantasy, and horror books, and many of those options being signed copies for pretty decent prices. Help us help them in supporting self-published authors, and they've also been gracious enough to give us a promo code for 10% off your next order. That code is DJ Quest, so check out their site, pick up a book, and save some cash.
And they do ship internationally, which I know is more expensive, but if you use that code, that'll at least eat some of it. So,
did you know that books spelled backwards is Scoob?
I did not. But thank
Scoob.
you for that information.
Yeah, Scoob, like Scooby-Doo. Like Zoink Scoob, let's get out of here.
Okay.
Leave me
All right,
Oh.
Justin, I'm going to read our patrons now. In order of subscription, we have Jan the Picker, Luciana Etrigan, Ryan the Topological, Damien the Rock of Faces, Nate Fiddle Me This, Shield Anvil Dylan, Calvin Wallace, Livia the Malazan Potato, and Aaron Mott Irregular Parker. Thank you, everybody. And I've forgotten to do this the last couple weeks, but I got to give an extra shout out to Jan here. I'm going to butcher his name here. Is it Yao Silva?
Joao.
He's an author, The Seeds of War. He's got a new book coming out. He's got a Kickstarter going on that is probably actually just wrapped up today or in a few hours. Put a tweet out saying anybody who, what the hell do you call it, subscribed to it, funded it, backed it, that's the word. I'd give a shout out to, because it was close to one of the stretch goals, and now I think he got 6 out of the 7. Maybe he'll get 7 out of 7 on his stretch goals. I don't know. Jan said he picked up the book and showed me his purchase or whatever you want to call it, and I've forgotten to do this the last couple weeks. So sorry, Jan, but there's your shout out for that. I can't see you guys now, so I was like, man, am I just talking to a fucking wall here or what?
I was ignoring you.
That should be a good trick we should play on him sometime actually.
Yeah. Just mute ourselves and just don't say anything. Turn off our camera.
We can just use hand signals. He's not watching.
He'll flip back over though, and he'll see us over here.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a pain because it like really makes things like lag. I'm looking at like a USB monitor, like a second monitor. So that'll probably be coming soon. And then I can just throw my summaries over there and then I can still see you guys. So you can't talk about me behind my back. You're probably doing it right now, aren't you?
No.
Well, I'm going to be extra mean tonight then, HC. I told you I had a comparison to make, and I don't know how you're going to feel about it. So
I already don't like it. Don't do it.
Now he cares. He gives no shits.
No.
No fucks to give now.
I don't even know what the comparison is. But people have compared my books to Akator, A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I'm just like, did you read my book? Like, what? That's a smut fantasy romance. I don't get it.
I don't know what that is. So, Justin, I'm hoping you're going to laugh. So. HC, I think you'll laugh too, and you'll be like, God, you're a dick. So,
no, what's new? Tell me what it is.
Well, when the time comes, I will tell you.
Okay, fine.
Anything else we want to talk about, or should we get started, folks?
Here we go. This is chapter 31 from H.C. Newell's Curse of the Fallen. Chapter is The Trials of Blood. And the epigraph here for chapter 31. Our time has passed, let the legends remain. Hidden deep underground are powers untamed. Darkness and terrors lie in your wake. Take heed of this warning and face your fate. The First Blood Prophecy. That was some clever...
Scary.
Yeah, that was a clever epigraph.
Thank you. I do my best.
It reminds me of those like wooden signs that you would find like a character traveling down like a dark and eerie road, and there's like those wooden signs and they've got like directions and then there's like a heat of warning on them. So that's kind of what I pictured, even though it has nothing to do with this chapter.
Those riddly things that just make your skin crawl.
Right. But yeah, here we go. A cold mist dampened their skin as they walked through the doorway and into darkness. The pale blue glow of hanging moss illuminated the chamber as the door behind them closed with a low grind of scraping stone. Glimmering crystal shards towered together in clusters around large mushrooms and rocks in the frigid space.
What do we do?
Nier peered through the darkness, searching for any sign or clue that could lead her down the right path. But she knew nothing of the trials or their tests. Moving through them without Cloud was an enormous risk, and her breath caught in her throat as she worried about what was to come.
Oh, Justin, also, I was thinking, maybe, do you want to be Avelic since all your characters are gone?
All my characters are dead. Yeah.
We really have had any dialogue for so long.
Avelic's like
you are just...
Cool.
If you need a character to die, I guess Justin's just got to play it. So it's probably not good luck for.
I'm like the Sean Bean of podcasts.
No, you got the hair for it. There you go. I like the smoke effect.
It's so fluffy.
Do a Sean Bean accent. I love his accent.
I don't remember. I'd have to hear it a million times.
It's so, I don't know what it is, but I love it. I love his accent. I can't do it unless I hear it too. It's so interesting. Okay. Avaloc, where do we go?
He looked around. He touched Nier's shoulder and pointed to a yellow glowing symbol etched into the wall across the cave. She followed his lead as he stepped over the streams and through a dense pocket of mushrooms. As their boots scraped against the fungi, clouds of white spores drifted into the air at their feet. Lork was close behind as they came to the wall and shielded their eyes from the brightly glowing rune. Avalok's eyes widened as he gazed at the foreign symbol. Nier carefully touched his shoulder and he flinched.
Avaloc, what is this?
He gulped the lump in his throat and returned his gaze to the ruin. Slowly he reached toward it. Zaimashik A ruin of the first blood, it says. Fingers grazed across the ruin, and the light reflecting against his face passed through empty air as he vanished. Nier stepped forward and reached out for him.
Avenok, Lorik, we have to.
She turned around and was stunned to find emptiness where Lorik once stood. The voices that once echoed through the air had ceased, leaving her in a deep, disorienting silence. She turned quickly from left to right, finding nothing but solitude and darkness. Her heart sank as she stared at the places they once stood, and the dread of her loneliness sank deep into her gut. As her thoughts wavered between fleeing and continuing on, footsteps echoed from the left, and she turned sharply with a gasp. Her eyes followed as the sound moved toward a doorway at the far side of the cave, and then faded into the blackness as of its entry. Paralyzed with fear, she was hardly able to take a breath. The large room felt small as she stood alone, waiting in the silence for the others to return. She gazed at the stone door of the cave entrance and wondered if Lorik and Avalok would seek its exit. If so, she could reunite with them and form a new strategy of survival. As she stepped toward the door, a horrible thought caused her to stop, and she released a deep sigh of regret. Should they exit the cave, there would be no re-entry, as she had used every drop of the potion to reveal the hidden entrance. Staring through the cave, her eyes fixed on the door, the thought of escape loomed in her mind. She couldn't do this alone, yet she couldn't leave. If Avalok and Lorik hadn't left the cave, they would still be in the trials, and without magic, they wouldn't survive for long. Her mind wavered between all the possibilities, and before she could come to a clear decision, her eyes shifted to the walls as a gentle glow formed along the stone. Broken of her thoughts, she watched a trail of yellow crystals illuminate around the cavern walls, leading to the unlit doorway where the footsteps had descended. As light caressed the room, Nier looked around and spotted a figure lying in the center of the chamber, whimpering in pain.
Hello?
She warily stepped closer and squinted her eyes to make out the silhouette of a woman lying alone in the darkness. Nier gazed upon the stranger for a moment, wondering how she came to be there. A ball formed in her throat as she pulled her sword from its sheath and inched closer. The pale light of the crystals shimmered against the woman's singed hair and dress. Large blisters exposing raw, pink skin covered her face and arms. The woman struggled to push herself up into a sitting position and then collapsed onto her bent arms as she coughed and wheezed.
Vader.
Her soft cries echoed through the silence, crashing hard against Nier's mind, and she spoke with a familiar voice. All color drained from Nier's face as she stared at the woman who only existed in her memories, a person she never thought she would see again, and one who filled her with pain.
Mother? Vader, don't let them change you.
Nier shook with guilt and sorrow, her face twisted in pain, as she relived the horror of her mother's final moments.
I love you.
Her mother took one final breath and collapsed. Nier's breathing trembled as she looked at her mother's lifeless body. It was an image that had been ingrained in her mind since the moment it happened 16 years prior. The night her village was massacred by the Order of Sorrow and her parents were slain. Nier gasped as her mother began to vanish. She dropped her sword and hurriedly knelt to her side, ready to take her mother into her arms. When she fell through her and landed hard against a stone. Curled into the ground, Nier tightened into the fetal position. Tears fell from her eyes as she shook with grief. Every breath trembled as she clenched her hands into tight fists.
Back, please. Don't leave me again.
Lying alone, trapped in her misery, she was reminded of all that had been taken from her, of the life that was nothing more than distant, blurred memories. But she knew that giving into the pain wouldn't keep her alive. It wouldn't bring her mother back. Slowly, she forced herself up and sat on her knees. With a sniff, she wiped her nose with her sleeve and glanced through the cave. She screamed Lorik and Avalok's names. While shaking her head, she wiped her eyes, and a sudden pluck of a lute string caught her attention. Her heart skipped as she listened to the sound as it faded to silence. She held her breath, waiting for another sound, waiting for anything. Another note echoed from the empty doorway. She was jolted with a spark of energy. Jumping to her feet, she snatched her sword from the ground and rushed to the doorway. As she approached its entry, she stopped and peeked into the blackness.
Lorik?
The loud echo of her voice softened as it moved down a long hall. Another pluck vanished her fear, and she raced into the darkness. She chased the sound. The soft glow from the doorway slowly faded as she moved further from the entrance as she went deeper underground. Near slowed her pace as she trekked into undisturbed darkness. When a deep rumble trembled through the walls, she came to a sudden halt. Her mouth was dry and she breathed in quick, gasped breaths. Every heartbeat thrashed in her ears as she turned from left to right, unable to see anything but darkness. The sound of footsteps pattered from down the hall. She held her sword outward defensively. Swallowing through the dryness in her throat, she called out to her friends. The silence was deafening as she waited for a response that never came. Her eyes glanced from one place to the next as she searched desperately for any sign of light. Though she had only just stepped into the hall, it felt as if hours had passed. She wondered if there would ever be an end. Cloud had warned her of the dangers of the trial, and she knew that whatever lay ahead wouldn't be easy. These caves were created by the Enclave, or First Blood, who were rumored to be the most powerful and devious magic users to ever existed. Nier believed herself a fool for thinking she could survive any test or trial given by a race so powerful and mysterious, and even more foolish to bring two non-magic users along with her. Wherever they were, she had no reason to believe they would survive without magical energy, as this test was meant for the most gifted of mages. Only those strong enough to survive could make it to Namashal, a cave that had held the mystical waters that could dispel the call of the Mark, guarding the A-Rune, and allow Nier to lift her curse with the energy inside. Noises thumped against the cave walls and interrupted her thoughts. She lifted her sword and pressed herself harder against the wall as the sound of footsteps echoed from every direction. Peering through the darkness, searching for whoever could be lurking in the distance, her eyes fixed on two glowing orbs that hovered in the tunnel ahead. Her breath caught in her throat as she gazed at them, watching as they slowly grew larger. She turned around, hoping for an escape, and was stricken by the sight of several more glowing orbs floating in the distance. Every breath was loud as she gasped for air. A light scratching sound broke through the silence and dragged loudly against the stone walls, moving closer toward her. She backed further into the wall, her hands aching from the tight grip on her sword. The orbs followed the noise of her step, becoming larger and brighter. Nier trembled with a light whimper as the grinding creak of bones and the clicking of tongues echoed from the mysterious creatures. Though the air was frigid, sweat dripped down her face. She stood against the wall, paralyzed with fear. As the orbs grew brighter, and she could see that they resembled eyes, dozens of pairs of eyes, staring directly at her. The snarling, clicking creatures scratched against the walls as they stalked closer. Nier jumped when a loud shriek pierced through the silence. Unable to see anything but the glowing eyes, she watched as they charged forward. And when she felt the rush of a stranger drawing closer, she swung her weapon. The sword met resistance as she slashed into her victim. A loud screech pierced her ears before the thump of a body hit the floor. Another screech echoed from behind. She turned and thrust her weapon forward. Thick, cold liquid drained across her hands as she stabbed through the now unmoving creature. She kicked it aside and stepped back. A deep quake shifted the stone and the walls trembled. The glowing orbs disappeared like lightning bugs in the fog when the creatures scurried away. The sound of grinding rock moved throughout the hall before a thunderous crash shook the corridor, and everything was silent. Dust and pebbles sprinkled from the ceiling as Nier stood alone, too frightened to move. Through several deep breaths, she pushed through the fear and walked in the direction she hoped she was supposed to go. Moisture covered her fingers as she trailed her hand along the wall to keep her on the path. When another quake shifted the cave, she pressed into the wall and closed her eyes. A final crash, identical to the one before, brought an end to the tremors, and she forced herself forward on shaky legs. 2 steps ahead, the tunnel came to a sudden dead end. Following to the left, she came to another wall and then another until she had moved in a full circle back to where she started. Her heart sank as she realized she was trapped. The heavy jolts and shifting rock must have been the corridors changing. Sweat beaded across her forehead. She felt as if the world was closing in on her. Unable to see mere inches away, she clung to the wall, feeling her way through. Running her hands quickly along the coarse surface, she felt a slight shift in the rocks as a pebble moved out of place. Clawing at those loose fragments, the wall began to chip away, and a stream of light peeked through the small crack forming beneath her fingers. A loud, shocked laugh escaped her throat as she gazed at the bright luminance that touched her cheek. She leaned closer and placed her eye to the wall, but could only see white as it burned into her cornea. Anxious to be out of this dark hell, she tore at the wall, ripping her fingernails as she fought to dig her way through. But the crack in the stone never grew larger as she scratched and clawed. Furious and desperate for an end, she unleashed a raw scream that vibrated through the air. She considered another walk around the walls that confined her. There could be another outlet or doorway she missed before, but the thoughts were quickly pushed aside as the fear of losing her only way out kept her in place. Should she step away, the wall could reseal itself or reopen and allow the glowing-eyed creatures to attack again. She clenched her jaw as she waited for another shift in the stone, but she knew it wouldn't come. This path led her here, and it was her magic that would free her. Magic that she had little knowledge and control of. With a heavy doubt, she placed her hand on the wall and conjured her energy into a raging vortex of heat and pain. Raw, untrained magic tore through her like acid fizzling through her veins. She screamed as it strengthened inside her, creating pressure and heat that cracked the stone beneath her touch. The cave moaned as fissures grew across its length like bolts of lightning. Her teeth clenched and jaw ached as she forced her magic outward in a powerful explosion. The heat from her energy evaporated the chill in the air, and she was flung back before smacking against the wall. Her body ached as she crashed to the ground. Blood seeped from the cuts along her face and arms. Every moment was crushing as she struggled to roll onto her side. Slow, shallow breaths entered her lungs, and her eyes struggled to adjust to the bright beam of light shining from across the hall. Nia gripped her forehead as she crawled to her knees. She lifted her hands into the light and slowly blinked her eyes into focus. As her vision cleared, she examined her palms to find no trace of burns or blisters, though they felt as if her flesh had been seared. Bringing her attention to the light, she found a narrow tunnel. As she crawled forward, she gasped at the pain in her hands, and at the entrance of the narrow passage, she pulled herself inside and squeezed through its shallow, uneven path. Warm light became hotter as she reached the end of the tunnel and came to an adjoining cavern. The small room was covered in glowing vines that trailed across the walls and ceiling, connecting only at the base of the tree that stood in the center of the room. Its wide branches creating a glowing canopy that filled the room with light. Thick roots twisted through the dirt-covered ground, becoming thinner as they grew closer to the walls. Climbing from the passage, she approached the tree and touched a flower. Magic tingled in the air, soothing her fear and doubt. Scanning the vine-covered walls, she found there was no doorway or exit. Her gaze returned to the tree, and she realized she was meant to meditate beneath its branches. Her eyes were closed as she focused on the energy flowing through her like waves upon the sand. She had meditated beneath the tree in Porster many times before, yet this time was different. The magic was stronger, raw, powerful. Every pulse filled her with strength and life. The bleeding cuts and flowering bruises across her skin slowly vanished as she sat beneath the tree, embraced by the warmth of its energy. The glow of the flowers and vines pulsed with her every breath, just as they did in the cave of Leland, just as they did at the tree in Porster. The serenity that cradled her with warmth and light was suddenly stripped away. Within an instant, she was cold and alone. Nothing else existed, yet she could feel the energy of the world swirling around her, encasing her in pain. She wanted to break free of its hold, but it had her tethered to its will. She couldn't escape, couldn't surrender. Her body wriggled, wriggled, as soft whimpers escaped her throat. Her eyes remained closed as she was pulled further into the darkness, forced to endure its fury as dark images flashed through her mind. Shadows dashing across the ocean floor, a glowing tree standing tall amidst stone, an underground city abandoned and forgotten, enormous monsters screaming with rage, and blood, a lot of fucking blood, staining the walls, covering swords, and dripping from hands. The visions faded, and she was pulled further into a world of shadows and solitude. While her body remained beneath the tree, she opened her eyes and found herself standing in complete and utter darkness. She gazed at the emptiness around her, wondering if it was real. The air was heavy, artificial, All feeling in life had been removed from her being. She was she was as empty as this place was dark, hollow, void, non-existent. Standing in a realm far beyond her own, she felt like an illusion herself. Nothing was real, life had held no meaning, nor did death. She simply was. But she knew it was a vision. Though she was present, standing in the blackness of whatever illusion the tree had manifested, she looked around in a daze, shallow water trickling beneath her feet, as she turned around searching for anything. A large stone door appeared in the distance. Surrounded by black, it stood alone, hovering in the nothingness that surrounded them. Slowly she approached and was hesitant to open it before she found there was no knob. Stepping back to get a better view, her eyes fell to the ground as foreign symbols appeared beneath her feet in a circular pattern. The glowing light illuminated her face as she knelt to the ground and placed her hands on the surface. Energy swirled within her, and she used her magic to decipher the language. As it faded, the symbols hadn't changed, yet she could now read them with perfect clarity. Enter the trials with great feet. The waters wait for those who seek. Darkness is blinding for those with sin. Waters are haunted by creatures within. Shackles and streets guide the way. Pale moonlight leads into the fray. Enter this chamber if energy you seek. Blood of the first holds the key. A rush of icy wind struck through her chest, and she was flung back to the ground. Her eyes opened, and she found herself back in the cave. The glowing tree sat before her, just as warm and bright as before. The air was light and pure, and she breathed a sigh of relief. She was no longer in the illusion that imprisoned her. Gazing at the branches, she noticed a soft yellow glow radiating from behind. Curious, she stepped around the room, and her heart jolted at the sight of another ruin etched into the wall. Its symbol was different, but she knew it was just as dangerous. A hard knot formed in her throat as she struggled over what to do. Touching this rune could be her only escape from this room. It could bring back Lorik and Avalok, or it could cast her into another vision of darkness and misery. She didn't understand the magic of the Enclave well enough to anticipate what could happen, and a cold sweat formed across her brow as the harrowing possibility of torture and sorrow. Hoping for another way out, she glanced through the room and saw that the tunnel she crawled through had disappeared, leaving behind a solid stone wall. Desperate and depleted, she returned her gaze to the ruin. Its glowing light burned into her eyes as she contemplated her fate and the fate of the others. She considered waiting for them here, but they'd never be able to enter this chamber without magical energy. They may not be able to survive at all without it. Nerves dragged her stomach into her feet at the thought of losing them. Whatever tests this trial had waiting, she would see them through, if for nothing else than to find the others and bring them to safety. They couldn't survive without her, and she wouldn't allow them to perish in these ruins alone. Swallowing the lump in her throat, she held her breath and raised her palm to the ruin. Her trembling fingers hovered above its gentle glow, and fighting through the fear and uncertainty, she pressed her hand on its surface.
Ooh, with a whole water bottle.
Yeah, that was definitely a long one. I struggled to summarize it merely because like it's so rich in detail. Like I didn't want to like cut that out because without it, it didn't seem like it was hitting the same. So
Yeah.
It's a lot longer than I normally would have liked to have a summary. I felt like it was absolutely crucial. Otherwise, that sense of just fuck isn't there, you know?
Are you going to make your comparison? Because I think I know what you're going to compare it to. Derek, is it here?
What are you thinking?
Stranger Things. Oh, I definitely possibly took inspiration from Stranger Things. If y'all didn't notice, whenever I don't know if y'all have seen it.
Yeah.
When Elle goes into the sensory deprivation tank and then she wakes up and it's just black and she's got water and then she can see like where Will is hiding and out in his little thing. I definitely took inspiration from that whenever she went into this weird plane.
I think I've only seen like the first 2 seasons, maybe 3.
It was in season 1, but it's probably been a while since you watched it. She only went there a couple times.
I know what scene you're talking
No.
about. That is not what popped into my mind when I read this.
Oh, that's good. Because I figured everybody would think of it. So I'm like, I probably probably like took too much inspiration from this because it's exactly the same.
No, that wasn't what I was thinking. It was
Oh.
in the next chapter where
Oh, okay.
I was thinking of it. So,
Oh, goodness.
Still HC. We have to be patient.
I don't know what that
Yep.
means.
Ooh.
Patience. I don't know. It's not part of my vocabulary.
I feel like
I have a question. Sorry, Justin,
No,
to
go.
interrupt you.
Ooh.
Doesn't Avalok have a little bit of magic? Can he do a little bit of something or no?
No.
Okay. What Cloud could do a little bit of something, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So Nier is a full sorcerer. She has multiple capabilities, which you do learn more about in book 2, more about the magic system. Cloud is considered an Eolan, so he can only do like one type of magic. Nier can do all the magic that there is in this world, and Cloud can only do one type. So he can only teleport and apport, I guess is whatever it's called, things like into his hands. Nier can do that too.
When Justin was reading and said that there were 2 non-magic users, I was like, wait, I thought Avalok could do a little bit of something, but I wasn't quite sure. And I'm like, well, maybe I mixed him up with Cloud, and I did. So
No, and I think it's confusing too because we know that Azael. Well, we don't really know anything about Azael, do we? No, that wouldn't confuse anybody because we don't even know anything about her. So yeah, no, it's just Cloud.
think of it like the Wheel of Time, Derek, where there are some channelers who are stronger with other weaves than others, and then there are some that like are a master of them all, kind of a thing.
Yeah, except
Yeah.
Cloud cannot non-magic users, they can't use magic. Like Cloud, he can't master any other magic but the magic he has. And we do know actually that Azael is First Blood. So that's probably what has confused you about Avalok. He does not have any magic.
I don't know if that's what confused me, or I was just like, I thought he could do a little something, but I think I just mixed him up with Cloud.
Avalok has that like magic user type of like persona. You know, like you would think that like based on the things that he does and he says that, you know, he's, as far as this world is concerned, is a magic user. So
Nope, he's just a really good fighter.
That's fine.
here's my one question, and maybe it's just because there's so much in this chapter. It's definitely one that you should be rereading. Is this like a pre-trial to the actual trial, or is this in itself a trial?
Once they entered the trials, whenever they had to use the magic and they entered into it, they are in the trials. This
Gotcha.
is the trials.
That was my headcanon, but there was a small part of me based on this like illusion that she gets, and like, you know, the glowing like transcription on the floor that surrounds her kind of makes me feel like it was just like a pretest. It was just a small part of me that was like, that doesn't seem to fit as well as my other thought.
I mean, I could definitely see that, and you can kind of look at it that way, because if you pay attention to the prophecy and you pay attention to the things that have been happening to her so far, you'll see how they all connect to the rest of the trials. But this is still the beginning of the trials. Like she could have very well died or given up or gotten too afraid to move on, which is the whole point of the trials. So I don't really think she's had, well, yeah, she did have to use her magic to get to the tree. So yeah, if she didn't have magic, she wouldn't have been able to survive at all. She would have been stuck there in the wall when it closed in on her. So yeah, this is part of the trials. It's just the beginning. It's going to get a lot worse. It's just the beginning.
What I thought was really cool is just in the last episode at the beginning, we talked about Numera appearing to her. And in whatever she was chanting, there was a part where it says just like, look for the light, it'll save you. And here we have that exact instance. So I just thought that was cool because it wasn't explained. It wasn't info dumped. Like you're supposed to be paying attention. Nier doesn't have any of these thoughts either. Like she's not like, oh my God, remember when Numera told me this? Like I should look for the light. You know what I mean? It was just, whether it was intentional or just from an author's perspective to not say that, but instinctively Nier just kind of knew that those two things are happening. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Well, I know what you're trying to say, and I purposefully don't and probably will not ever explain any of the prophecies. They do get explained through what happens in the series, but there's one part in the trials when someone will bring up the prophecy that she got from the tree, and they're like, okay, this is what we have to do because this is what the prophecy said. But it happens once. Everything else just happens, and then once you get finished reading it, if you go back to the prophecy, then you'll see where it all connects and how it all kind of unfolded. But I can tell you that the prophecy where it says, enter the trials with great feet, blood of the first holds the key, that is specific to the trials of blood. So that prophecy will be revealed in all that stuff that's been said for the end of the book or by the end of the book. And the prophecy that she got from that Numera creature, whatever it was, that's a prophecy that's going to be
Series long.
yeah, like you'll see it unfold throughout the whole series. So that one's important to the series, and this one's just important to the trials.
So the one that's important to the trials, where it says first blood, is that potentially where do they need Azael to continue, or is this something where Avalok being right? Avalok's Azael's sister or brother or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Avalok's first blood.
He's kind of first blood, as it was kind of explained, is where will allow her to get deeper into the trials.
Potentially. That's how it seems.
It is how it
One
seems.
or the other may be true. I'm not telling you which one. But as we know, the trials are extremely dangerous, and they don't tell you anything about them. This prophecy is basically telling her what she needs to know, even though she's already in the trials. So she would not have survived this far if she didn't have the magic required, even though she doesn't know what magic she even needs. So, it's all going to be revealed by the end. I think a couple of these are kind of spelled out for you with that prophecy, but most of them you just have to, it unfolds as you read. And if you remember the prophecy, then you'll see how it connects back.
Another thing that I thought was really cool was her mother is clearly like a test the trials are throwing at her, right? As well as like the glowing orbs that end up being like these eyes and like the clicking sound or whatever is also another test. But not in the face that it's like an adversary type thing, but more in the fact that like if we go back to the very beginning of the book in the cave of the Enclave, there was an orb that guided her. And I feel like this was like a test of one with her mother, like being able to continue on despite the influx of terrible emotions and memories. And then with the orbs, a test of trust, right? Like before, she was able to trust an orb willingly as it was guiding her. And now there's like tons of them. Yeah, I don't know. That's just, I guess, me thinking what I was thinking as I was reading the chapter. Not really articulating it well, but
no, you are, and that's not what I was thinking when I wrote it, but I'm going to use it because I like it. Hey, that was way deeper than I was going with it.
Where were you going with it?
It was just such glowing eyes. I don't know. It was scary. But I can tell you guys too, and I may have already told you this, but the glowing orb and the voice that told her to trust in the beginning, that is explained in book 5.
Ooh.
So we figure out what it is and what it was doing there and what its goals were in book 5.
That's cool.
Which is not written yet.
Nope. I haven't even started on book 4 yet.
What made you decide specifically book 5?
I didn't really decide it. I just know I'm going back to that location by book 5.
Got it.
So we're probably going to revisit that cave, or at least Vleland. We're going to revisit Vleland, and we get to actually see the Nyx, like the vampiric race. Like, all that wasn't random. It's going to come back. It's just, it didn't really fit in this book. So it's going to come back later in the series whenever it's more appropriate. And then it kind of gets more explained.
Cool.
It's really cool.
And some good insight there.
I thought it was cool.
The last thing that I'll talk about is just the sense of depravity or depravity. Yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Deprivation. The sense of deprivation, loneliness. She's in a dark room. I kind of just imagine, all of those like videos that you see of like people in like a soundproof room. Granted, it's not soundproof, but like there's noises, there's creaking, there's rumbling, there's these random things that are showing up, and just the strength of determination and your mental fortitude. It just has to be top notch. Otherwise you're not making it. And just on top of all of these things, the miniature tests, so to speak, within this like beginning trials of blood, as well as just the mental fortitude to continue on, the determination to keep going in such a confined, potentially claustrophobic. You have no idea what's going on. You're clueless. You're just walking around aimlessly, trying to do everything that you can, and you don't even know if it's right. Like, holy fuck. Like,
And not even that, but it starts out with her dead mom talking to her. Like it starts out like with a freaking bang. Like, and then Avalok and Lorik just disappear and she's just alone. And then all of a sudden these things are trying to kill her and the walls are closing in on her. And I get scared walking through my house when it's dark. So there ain't no way I'd be able to do what she's doing.
that reminds me of like a TikTok video of something like that where they're going through and like turning off all the lights in the house, but there's this like thing chasing them as they turn the lights off. It's
Yes.
meant to be like comedic. So they're like racing around the house trying to get all the lights off before like it will get her.
Yes.
It was funny. Another thing that as we're talking about that, Lorik and Avalok disappearing kind of almost seems like a representation of choice. She has a decision to make, right? And that is, it seems almost kind of representation of a lot of the conversations that Avalok and her have had in the previous chapters about like revenge and kind of that character growth and stagnation and regression that we have discussed. She doesn't have Avalok. She doesn't have Lorik, right? And so it seems like to be a physical manifestation of her decisions, right? Like she herself has the one to decide whether she wants to seek vengeance or not. And Lorik and Avalok not being there to convince her one way or another is she's pretty much just left to her own vices.
Yeah, she's got to do it all. Your mic cut out when you were saying that.
Oh, I was just saying that whether I'm right or wrong, I don't care.
I mean, I don't know if I was thinking of that, but I like the train of thought. Yeah, I kind of, whenever I was going into the trials, I wanted it to incorporate a lot of fear, obviously. This is the end of the book, and it's a very formidable place. It's supposed to be extremely dangerous. So obviously, I got to make it scary. And what's scarier than being alone in a cave like this? Like, it's much scarier. And then I also wanted it to incorporate a lot of backstory, but in a more organic way that's not like an info dump. So that's why we have like visions of her mother and things like that are going to appear. And then there are these chapters called Reflections of, and each one of them is a physical reenactment of the character's past that they have to relive in order to survive. So those are some of my favorite chapters. So yeah, I like just everything that you said about Nier just having to take her fate into her own hands, and she doesn't have anybody there to kind of guide her and no one there to really tell her what to do. She really has to just figure it out on her own right now when she's had these people here who have sort of been guiding her in a way and helping her this entire time. And she's doing this for them. Like that's a huge reason that she's even trying to survive is because she could have just ran. She could have left the cave. She was right at the beginning, but she didn't know if they would make it out. So, she was there, kind of they're pushing her forward, even though they're not even with her.
Sure. No, I mean that makes total sense. The one thing that I'm like mildly confused about, and it's not like a ton, but just this illusion that I'm assuming as she's meditating underneath the tree is kind of like pushing her into this illusion. Is that right or wrong?
Yeah, and that's she had another vision like this, I believe, in Mange before the goddess or whatever it was approached her. I think because no, wait, no, it was real, wasn't it? Because the tree was dying and then the thing came and other people saw it. That's what I'm thinking of. You learn more about the trees as the series goes on. But yes, I mean, there's not really like a spoiler there. The tree is a huge source of magical energy. So
Right.
it can basically pull her consciousness into another reality if it wanted to.
But is it tied to the Trials of Blood or is it just a separate thing?
The trees are not tied to the Trials of Blood. That tree specifically, its magic is kind of integrated into it. So it gave her the prophecy that she needed and it
Right.
showed her things that she needs in order to survive. But the trees themselves are not connected to the Trials of Blood. They are all over the place. And we've seen a few of them throughout the first book.
So this wasn't necessarily the trees trying to assist or guide her, right?
No.
Okay.
No, there's no like, if you want to call it, not divine intervention, but you know what I'm trying to say, where the magic tries to help guide her. She's on her own. There's
Gotcha.
nothing like that that's pulling her forward, as far as we know now. But you learn a lot more about the trees in book 3. I really sit down and explain the magic system and what it means, and you learn about their importance and what they do. And then in book 2, you also see more of what they can do, but you really learn about them in book 3.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I was curious if there was a connection. But yeah, I am legit. That's all I have. Sorry.
No, I liked all that. That was deep. Got some really good
It's good stuff.
really good thought.
Good stuff, man.
Oh, one more thing about the previous chapter. Sorry. The Lork's loot thing. Was that Lork actually looting, or is that like the trials testing her a bit?
The world may never know.
Gotcha. Okay, fair enough. Chapter 32.
Creatures of the deep. We are not blessed with an epigraph on this chapter. Sad day.
Oh,
Warm air.
before you start, there are no epigraphs for the rest of the book.
Oh,
For real?
For real.
that was the last one.
The last
damn
one,
it.
because I don't put epigraphs on like intense chapters because I feel like it kind of slows it down. So the last one was where it warns you about the trials of blood and all that stuff, and that was it. There might be one in the last chapter, but I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that was the last one.
Bummer. I enjoyed them.
They're pretty good, but I didn't feel like they really fit anymore. I felt like the last one was good enough to kind of hold you throughout the rest of the trials.
Gotcha. So we're just on a mad dash here for the finish line.
Pretty much. Now, they do come back in book 2. I do have them in the rest of my books, but for book 1, say adios.
This
It
is
ended
it.
on a good note.
It's weird to think
No,
there's 3
well.
chapters left after this. Or 3
No, we
episodes.
got 3 episodes, yeah, after this one. Yeah, we're getting down there. Justin, you are still fine with being Avalok?
Yeah, that's fine. It's gonna suck, but yeah.
All right. The warm air turned cold as Near found herself in a different part of the cave. A pool of water reflected light. Near stepped closer and she could see a tunnel that went beneath the surface. She heard a noise behind her and turned with sword drawn. It was Avalok, and she was relieved to see him. She hugged him and shed a few tears, not wanting to let go.
Avalok, what happened? Where were you?
I was in the cave. You two disappeared.
Lorik, he isn't with you?
No, I was alone.
Her heart raced as she searched for him. She knew he had to be here somewhere. With sword still in hand, she took off down the hall as Avalok reached out to her while she called Lorik's name. The further she ran into the cave, the darker it got. She wasn't sure how far she had gone and didn't care what happened to her. She only cared about finding her friend. She fell to her knees crying. The only sound in the cave was what she produced. Then, like a feather in the wind, she heard a faint voice calling to her.
I'm here. Follow my voice. This way.
She heard footsteps getting closer, and she stopped to listen and catch her breath. A sudden gust of cold wind pushed her back, and she stumbled before catching her footing. She looked into the darkness as footsteps continued down the hall. She was afraid to lose them, and she kept going until she came to a glowing doorway and crashed into Avalok. He wrapped her up to keep her from falling, while a shadow fell to the ground.
Lorik,
Near?
you're alive. Thank the gods you're alive.
What happened?
We got separated. Are you okay?
I don't. Lorik had his hands on his stomach and chest and gasped, looking around the cave, terrified.
What is it? What's wrong?
Spiders! They're everywhere!
It's okay. They're gone.
Is it over? Is this the end?
No, I think it's far from over.
Fuck! Fuck it to the deepest pit of 7th hell.
Jesus.
I was really looking forward to doing that, to be honest.
He was so kind of calm the whole time. He let it out.
No.
Let it
No,
out,
as
Lorik.
soon as I was like, I cannot wait to do this.
Just that little meme with the face.
Near kept her focus on Lorik and Avalok knelt by the water. He touched the surface and then rubbed his fingers together. He noticed a vial in the cracks of a rock marked with Avish symbols. He said he found something. Near looked at the markings and read the symbols.
This way?
It's Cloud. He left us behind. It'll allow us to hold our breath indefinitely.
He showed them the capsules.
Are you sure they'll work?
Yes, I've used them before.
This is such a nightmare. We're never going to survive this place.
She and Avalok both sat down.
What happened to you? How did you survive without magic?
When I touched the ruin, you two disappeared. I was still in the cave, but it was different. There were people everywhere.
People? Who?
I don't know. I couldn't understand them, but they seemed real. They could see and speak to me. When they realized that I couldn't understand them, they attacked. I had to fight my way out. Ran down a hall and found myself here.
I thought you needed magic to survive here.
You do. I don't know how he survived, but I barely made it. If Cloud hadn't left this, then we wouldn't have the means to continue. Not without magic.
We probably still don't.
Nier hugged her knees and stared into the water, wondering how deep the tunnel went, how long they would have to endure the trial, and if it was too late to turn back. She thought she could try to find another way to lift the curse without risking her friends.
This was such a mistake. We should have never come here.
It's too late to turn back. Cloud's here, and I won't leave him. We need to catch up to him. He could be in danger.
Yeah. Do you think he's still alive?
I don't know. These trials aren't meant for the weak.
That kind of makes it sound like Cloud's weak.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Hold on. What you saying, Avalok?
Her eyes moved to Lork as he passed her a canteen of water, which she accepted. She drank, then passed it to Avelik.
You good, Law?
Yeah, sure.
We'll see this through. Hope you've got a few good lines out of this.
Avelik gave them each a blue pill. He told them to swallow it, then take a deep breath, and that it would last until they exhaled and took another breath, and reminded them to stay calm. So, would it going down there?
Yeah. You two ready? Let's get this over with.
She dove into the water and swam at a steady pace, listening as Lorik and Avelik broke through the surface of the water. Glowing algae stuck to the walls and gave off soft light. Scared as she was, Nier closed her eyes and settled down. Though she felt the need to resurface and breathe, she staved that feeling off. Overcoming her fear, she swam into the darkness, blinded by the absence of light. She kept her hand on the wall and kept swimming, hoping to find the end. Something nudged at Nier's leg and floated away just as soon as she felt it. Trying not to think of what it could be, she pressed on. However, she kept feeling nudges and a sound that reminded her of a chain rattling. She stopped, feeling around her when her hand touched a warm face. The panic she felt fled when she realized it was Avalok. She held onto him and felt for Lorik and found his mop head. They swam together down the dark tunnel. Still, as they swam, they were nudged by the mysterious, soft, floating objects. Though Nier gently steered them aside. Further ahead, there was a soft glow coming from the wall. They swam faster, hoping it was an exit. It wasn't a way out. It was another glowing rune. Avalok touched the symbol, and the rune and light filled the tunnel. As she looked behind her, she saw what they were bumping into. Bodies. Hundreds of them. Low voices filled Nier's head. Thoughts of sorrow and death. The voices grew louder and louder in her head, while fear turned to pain in her chest. They clawed at her mind, begging for mercy and forgiveness. She saw the body of a young boy. His voice was in Nier's mind as he cried for his mother, confused and fearful. She could feel his fear in her soul as she reached out to touch him and stroked his head. A low growl made its way through the water, but it wasn't like the cries and screams that filled her mind. The boy was breathing, growling, and moving. Nier wondered if this was a test given by the trials. Avalok and Lorik hadn't noticed yet. Nier looked at the chain as it rattled beneath the boy's feet. He was reanimating. Nier backpedaled and ran into more bodies and could only watch in horror as they began to reanimate too. Avalok finally became aware of the bodies as one swiped at his face. He kicked the body back and used his sword to take its wrist off, and the hand sunk to the bottom. Nier slashed at another while she was pulled from behind. Bony fingers pierced through her armor. She fought it off while maintaining her composure not to scream and release her breath. The corpse she was fighting went still as Lorik removed his dagger from its skull. The group fought their way through the horde to a small opening at the end of the tunnel. Thanks to the glowing algae providing a small amount of light, she could see her friends' faces. Blood clouded the water, coming from the wound on Lorik's leg. She dug out a bandage and wrapped his leg. They continued swimming deeper into the cavern. As they swam, they entered an underwater city. Cobbled streets and buildings with windows bordered an empty road. Nier pulled at Lorik's arm, watching mer people swim in the distance. Nier thought that Lorik would have plenty of stories to tell once they got out of here. In fact, he probably wouldn't shut up about it. Avelik found a large platform and they swam to investigate it. There was another yellow glowing rune on it. Lorik wasn't excited about it, but Nier gave Avelik the okay. The rune became bright. Squeals came from all around them as the merpeople rushed towards them, fangs exposed. One tried to sneak up on Avelik, but Nier alerted him, and he struck his sword against its chest. But his hair was tangled with another merperson as it pulled him closer. Nier swam and swiped at the merperson, and it backed away, but Avelik stabbed the fucker right in the face. The merpeople hissed and scurried away. She looked behind and found Lorik trying to fight off a merperson with his dagger. As she got close, a cloud of bubbles rose from the deep behind him. Nier backed away as a shadow rose from the depths. Spiked arms struck the platform. Lorik looked behind himself with wide eyes, seeing the monster. Its body was covered by a thick exoskeleton as black as the cave they swam through, and it had 2 white eyes. The merperson Lorik had been struggling with tried to flee, but was grabbed by the monster that loomed above. As it sank, it reached for Lorik and drug him down also. Nier reached out in panic, but was pulled back by Avelik. He kept her from making a fatal mistake and stopped her from screaming and releasing her breath. She pushed him away and swam into the dark, not caring to see if he followed. She swam down and could see Lorik struggle against the beast, but he couldn't get free. The monster ripped the merperson in half. Nier froze as she heard the snap of bones, seeing blood and entrails fill the water, and then it returned its attention to Lorik. Panicking, she sent a burst of energy at the monster, flipping it backwards, but it still clung tight to Lorik. Nier swam looking for her adversary. Something touched her arm. She drew her sword, but it was Avelik. She stopped herself before attacking. They both turned back to the monster. While the current shifted and created a whirlpool, sweeping the 2 remaining friends away. As she came to a stop, she saw the monster floating far beneath her. She could see Lorik, and he was alive at the moment. That was all that mattered. She focused her energy within herself, expanding in her exhausted chest. She looked at the creature and then vanished, reappearing right in front of it and struck it in the chest. It swiped at her and she teleported behind it and stabbed it in the back where its flesh was exposed. Finally, Lorik was released from its grip and swam to safety. As she readied for another attack, she noticed wounds that she hadn't made and realized Cloud had fought this thing too and wondered if he was still alive. Distracted, she didn't notice a tentacle rise up behind her. It jabbed her in the back. She exhaled a deep gasp that burned through her skin. Her body went stiff as heat raced through her body. A claw grabbed her and pulled her towards its mouth. Nier's throat burned and her lungs were filling with water as the potion lost its effect. She convulsed and fought for breath that wouldn't come. Her body grew numb and tingly, and visions of her life blurred in front of her. Her childhood, when her parents read her bedtime stories, her time alone in the woods, and when she was introduced to the Brotherhood. She was comfortable with the warmth she felt as it was an escape to the agony, and that was all she had ever wanted, just an escape. Now, it was here and hard to refuse. Her body went limp as she hovered between life and death. With her eyes now closed, she didn't see Avelik get behind the creature and drive his sword into its spine. It shrieked and broke through her tranquil thoughts, though she still wasn't afraid. The sound drifted through her mind like leaves in the wind, carrying into darkness until fading to silence. The claw released its grip, and Nier floated lifelessly through the depths.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
She did.
I doubt it.
So,
in other books.
I would like to compare this chapter to the cinematic masterpiece that is Star Wars: The Phantom Menace.
Which episode is that? One with the freaking go-kart race thing, whatever it is, where they spend 45 minutes racing.
I'm pretty sure it's the first one where they go underwater, right? And there's always a bigger fish.
Oh, the Gungan city.
Is that what Jar Jar? Is that where Jar Jar's from? Oh my God!
You Jar Jar'd it. You Jar Jar'd it.
Freaking Jar Jar!
He's a Jar Jar Binks.
But when I read
episode? I feel like it might be the second.
Lisa, read the Curse of Fallen.
I don't remember. Yeah, it's one of those. I thought it was Phantom Menace, but no, that's what, when I read this, that's what I felt like. Is obviously it's not. That's quite the same, but there's in Star Wars they had their little underwater boat thing,
Yeah.
But it's what it reminded me of.
Wrong. You're wrong. No,
I did like this chapter a lot, though. I read this and I told Justin that I read that, and I'm like, this is probably the biggest cliffhanger we've had yet. And he was like, what? So,
yeah,
it was really good.
2 hours later.
She literally drowned though, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a feeling she's coming back from this one now. My bigger thought is Cloud. Like, was he able to move on or he did?
yeah, he did. They all did. Now Avalok and Lorik have to get through with no magic, and both the magic users are gone.
They're doomed.
The story is just going to be from Avalok's point of view from now on. That's the rest of the series is just Avalok.
Yeah.
Well, that would be a curveball for sure.
Pulling a freaking Game of Thrones on everybody.
What's that?
Instead of pulling a Game of Thrones on everybody, just introduce Nier as the main character, but then at the end of book 1, she dies, and the rest of the series is actually about somebody else.
There you go.
Subvert
little Ned Stark action. I had, I guess, kind of what I felt like I had a fair amount of thoughts here on this chapter, but starting from the top, Avalik was like, I was in the cave, you two disappeared. And when I read that, I was just like, well, he seemed kind of nonchalant about it, which I thought was kind of odd. But I know he was like hugging her and everything, but I was like, I kind of thought he'd have like, or at least when I read it, I didn't feel like there was a lot of emotion there behind the words he was speaking, which just felt weird to me.
Well, Avalok's a very guarded person anyway, so he wouldn't, just be emotional. He's been through a lot, so he kind of stays calm all of the time. It does get better in theory, but
I mean, I can relate to that, but I was just like, yeah, I wasn't sure like who. I mean, they both disappeared from each other, but who really like disappeared? Was it Nier disappearing, going off somewhere else, or was it him? And and then they just met back up. I wasn't quite sure on that, but
yeah, I mean, well, to him, they disappeared because he was still where he was, and then to Nier, they were all still standing there, but the other two were gone. So to whoever you're, whatever perspective you're at, the other people disappeared.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was almost like the Enclave, what I'm taking, kind of catered their own experience per those people, So like 3 different realities all starting at the same spot where the other 2 characters disappear.
Yeah, that's how. They all obviously went through different things, because we know Avalok and Lorik wouldn't have been able to get to that tree, at least not the way Nier did, because she had to use her magic to get to it. But that's how, towards the end, and you did comment on this, so we'll come back to it, whenever Nier hears, or she's like, Lorik, where is he? And she runs through the cave, and then Lorik, she can hear his footsteps and stuff, so they're like kind of converging, but they can't see each other because they're still in different planes, but they're coming to the area where they can see each other, so it's kind of like an in-between sort of thing, where like she can hear him, but she still can't see him yet. So like,
sure,
they're all still in the cave somewhere. They're just in, like Justin said, they're all just kind of in different realms of the cave, because the Trials of Blood, as you read it, you'll realize that a lot of it is catered to the individual, and you have to go through individual tests, so to speak, to survive. Like I said, with the reflections, they each have to relive some horrible memory that they've been through. Each of them have to do that. So, it's kind of catered to them in a way. And that's kind of how it started.
Gotcha.
Like Avalok didn't see her mom lying there. He saw people, and they were trying to talk to him, and he couldn't understand them. So they all went through, and Lorik was like dealing with spiders or something.
Oh, okay. I got you. It's making a little more sense now. My next thought, your line, and I took it word for word here, but then like a feather in the wind, she heard a faint voice calling for her. I just really liked that when I read it.
Thank you. And the other one where you said, I really like that, it said leaves in the wind. So it was almost the same sentence.
Yeah, they were similar, but yeah, I liked them both. And I was like, it just was one of those things that like drew me in as I was reading it.
Cool.
And then Nier says, I'm here, follow my voice this way. And to me, I kind of felt like that was a little backwards. I would have thought she would have been going to his voice, because maybe he's hurt. Like she didn't know what he was doing. Maybe he got hurt and he can't move. But, then I thought about it and like, kind of like you said, they're probably just running kind of towards each other, really.
Well, and I'm sure that like Nier can't transition into his illusion, but he can transition from his illusion to the next step.
Yeah, that's kind of what she was thinking since Avalok wound up there. So since they're both there, she's thinking where the water is probably where we are supposed to go, because that's where we can reunite. So she's like, come to me if you can hear me. And then, the gust of wind was him moving through her. That's what that was.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
So, and I don't know if it said it before. It says she heard a faint voice calling out for her, and then she hears footsteps getting closer, and then the gust of wind moves through her, and then the footsteps keep going. So yeah, that's Lorik running, trying to find her. He moves through her, and she felt him, and then she turned around and chased after him, and they both wound up where they were supposed to be at the same time.
I don't think I caught that. Really,
Blaming y'all on that one.
sounds good. Yeah.
It was a
Near
random
her
gust of wind
line.
with footsteps. No big deal.
Yeah. Guess I wasn't in the right headspace.
It's okay. It's easy to overlook.
A cool detail.
For sure. Yeah. This line from Near where she's like, "Oh, this is such a nightmare. We're never going to survive this." When I read that, I'm like, I can really just imagine you saying that, HC.
Excuse me. Misa knows
just
how
felt
like
like
that.
it just felt like a really like you sentence.
She totally jar jarred you.
Oh, what?
Hey,
Okay, I definitely would, but I'm still offended.
it wasn't meant to be offensive.
Yeah, that is definitely something I would say. I'm a lot like Near, just the much more uncool version of her. And the much less impulsive, emotional version of her. She's extremely impulsive. I would hope I wouldn't act like her, but I'd be too scared to do anything, so I would just sit there.
Imagine you don't have as many adventures as Near.
Unfortunately not. I live a modern 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
I wish
that'll kinda
people were
do
out to
it.
get me so I could travel the world.
Going to poop at grocery stores and everything.
I know. And she does not have these problems, okay? Women can poop where they want.
Here's my question. Does Near have issues pooping?
No. There's a confident woman.
She poops between that crack. Fuck the crack. I'm leaving the door open.
You don't like it, don't gotta smell it.
Drink it in, right?
All right. You can dig the hole for my poop if you don't like the smell of it.
And you know
Oh,
what?
boy.
I'm not flushing.
That's right. I ain't gonna wipe. I'm gonna let y'all sit with it.
I'm going to use my
Probably.
magic to make sure this automatic thing doesn't work.
All right.
Anyway.
Justin got his poo-poo joke in for the night.
Oh my god. Now that we know about Near's bowels, let's continue on.
Right.
Right. I had this thought when I was rereading this chapter and then summarizing it when Lorik and Near disappeared or Avlok disappeared, whichever perspective. He says, I was still in this cave, but it was different. There were people everywhere. I was wondering if it was those people that were chained underwater, and you kind of dispelled that.
Well,
but that was
wait
kind of
a
where my
second.
head went.
You're talking about the people that were underwater when they were alive. Or are you talking about he actually seen people in chains?
I guess, I don't know.
I mean, that's really kind of left up to theory, but in my head, it was the people that are chained up underwater, but they were alive.
Gotcha. I just thought it was because it's kind of like maybe a subtle comedic timing because throughout all of these chapters, he has such a disconnect with human and the way that they go about doing things. And I thought it was just kind of like one of those things where he's just like, no, I'm surrounded by people, people everywhere. God fucking damn it. Kill me now. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So that's
Well, they weren't human.
So I know that he has like a kind of cautionary, like, just stay back, man. Like, I'm good. Don't touch me.
Well, I mean, I feel like, and I don't want to say because I can't remember when I wrote it, but I feel like that may have been intentional because he's so introverted, I guess would be the word. I don't really know. Because, it is based on how they would react and things that they're uncomfortable with. So being in a space full of people who kind of seem like they're living in this cave, because he was still in the cave. He was where he was when he touched the rune, and he looked around, and there's just people. It's just where they live. They're just here. So we can only imagine that they were probably enclave people, and they're all talking to him like, what the heck are you doing here? And he just can't understand them, so they're like, you shouldn't be here, so they try to kill him. Just, I guess for headcanon, those people that he's seen, that he was in that realm with, and they were actually coexisting for a moment, those are the people, or descendants of the people that are, not descendants of the people, but they are people who wound up wrapped up, chained underwater.
Okay. I didn't think that they were like chained up at the time where he was seeing them.
Okay.
But I just kind of wondered, because like Near's hearing these voices and then they attack her. And so it felt like to me maybe there was a connection there.
Yeah, I mean there kind of is. I thought you meant like he was underwater or something whenever I read your comment because I didn't really have a lot of context whenever I replied to it. So I apologize about that. But yeah, it was a connection because the people who lived in the cave wound up being buried or murdered or whatever happened to them and chained underwater down there, and they are just now part of the trials forever.
Is there any further explanation on it, like in later books, how they wound up there or anything?
No, I'm thinking of maybe doing some kind of extra book that goes into like the lore and the histories of different parts and pieces of each of the books, just for people who are interested. But there's not really a reason to explain that. So I just kind of like to leave it open ended because theories are what keep stories alive. And once you have all the answers, the mystery of everything sort of dies with it. And people, there's no more conversation to have because you have all the answers.
Just the idea of having these like human bobbers underwater just floating there is interesting to me in, I guess, a morbid way, but it just is, yeah, it's interesting. Like, it's what the fuck? I want to know more about that. So I would be interested in something like that.
And I think that, while I agree with you, HC, it doesn't have to be like a black and white thing. Like, all things have to be theoretical. You can bait the hook, so to speak, especially with nerds like Derek and I, where interesting histories and just even like very specific events taking place in history, it doesn't need to be any more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, have you guys ever played Skyrim by chance?
Yeah.
The snow elves in Skyrim, the Dwemer, they're kind of like the Enclave. I took a lot of inspiration, if you want to call it that, from the Dwemer because they're a race who lived underground. They were very, very advanced and they just vanished. And you never find out what happens to them ever. Like we still don't know what happened to them. The creators of the game never tell you. And it's so interesting. Like it keeps me going back to the game. I keep thinking about it. I keep wondering. I want to know more, but I can't because it's not out there. So that's kind of what I was trying to do with some of the aspects of my book is I want people to keep thinking about it. I want them to keep wondering and being interested and trying to figure it out. And maybe there are answers and maybe there aren't, but if I knew the answers to what happened to the Dwemer in Skyrim, I wouldn't be as interested and I wouldn't keep thinking about it because I would know.
Or maybe you would though. You'd think maybe like, well, what could they have done differently? Avoid. I don't know. Maybe you wouldn't. That's kind of how I feel. Like if I got the answer, I'd be like, okay, well, I don't have to worry about that. But now I would think about like, well, what led them to that point?
I mean, yeah, but those questions to me at least aren't as interesting. Like thinking of what could be is because of the decisions that they did make isn't as interesting as why did they make those decisions at all? What happened to them? Where did they go? What led them to this? Why don't we know what happened? And I mean, that game's old. It's like 13 years old or something, and I still want to know
Yeah,
what
it's
happened.
wild.
Like if I knew if like in the game they explained it, then they would just explain it. It's like the Dragonborn. There's no mystery once it's explained. So by the time the game ends, I don't even think about it anymore because you just have all the answers.
Gotcha. I don't think I've ever actually fully beaten. Well, I haven't beat the main story on that game, but
Yeah, we have 7 copies of Skyrim, and I've put over 1,000 hours into it. We're playing it right now, actually, on co-op.
there's a co-op.
There's a mod to do co-op together, and it is really,
Interesting.
really fun. It's very fun.
Huh. That's cool.
It's only for PC though, so if you don't have PC, you can't play it. But it's really, 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 really fun. I love it. I don't even think I could play it by myself again. Co-op. They need to do a co-op for the next Elder Scrolls because it's so fun.
I had been playing it and then I gave up on it. I didn't give up on it, but I just got kind of tired because I always had problems like it'll like freeze up on me and shit, and I don't know why. So then I just finished playing Aliens Fireteam Elite, which was it was really fun and it had a really good story, surprisingly. Which is pretty cool. And I got to shoot a shitload of aliens, which was a lot of fun.
You should play Halo. That's a good alien game.
Well, this is like the aliens from like the aliens movies that I love. So
Yeah, I know. But I mean, like, if you like the space alien type stuff, Mass Effect has a very good storyline, and it's based
yeah. I played Mass Effect games, even Andromeda. I played the Halo games, except for maybe like the very newest one. But
Yeah, I haven't played the newest Halo. I don't even care to play it. Halo went so far
Yeah.
downhill story-wise.
I I was like in middle school when that game came out, and now I'm almost fucking 37 here in a couple days. So
Yeah, my husband was he played Halo. He remembers whenever Xbox Live came out with Halo 2, I think it was. So like he played it since the beginning. He's a freaking Halo fanatic. We have a huge Master Chief metal poster in our game room at our house.
oh, awesome.
It's pretty cool. All right, I gotta blow my nose.
Well, you're blowing your nose. I'll move on to my next comment here. Valak gives them a blue pill. And I don't know how that's very helpful to anybody when he's giving them Viagra.
I don't know. Lord probably needed it that night in Mange. I didn't
Yeah,
even think
so
about that with it being a blue
the
pill.
Valak's a day late and a dollar short here. So.
Lord's like, dang it. But if you guys, I made it blue because water is like a blue color. I didn't want it to be clear, so that's why it's blue. But that's funny because I really did not think about that. But
that was like the first thing that popped into my head for whatever reason. So, a blue pill?
That's funny. But if you remember, and I told you guys, I think I told y'all, whenever Cloud was, when Nier was going through Cloud's stuff when they first met, and he saved Lorik, and him and Nier were in the mausoleum, and they were talking, and he gives her the note that's from Azael. She's going through his things, and she pulls out a vial of blue pills, and that's the blue pills that she pulled out. So it kind of connected back. Like little tiny details like that. Like it really doesn't matter if it's in there, but I still find it kind of interesting. You know, if you like reread, you'll be like, oh, hey, that was from the trials.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I remember that, and I remember you pointing that out. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, now that it's come full circle, how exactly did Cloud know that he needed to bring the pills to go underwater for that reason?
He doesn't know exactly what's in the trials, but he is very close with a scholar of the First Blood, so it can just be assumed that this scholar told him he might need something like this. He just kind of came prepared because he had other things that he doesn't wind up using, but he just kind of was prepared for anything, really. But he does mention a guy named Talon who comes into book 2. And Talon actually is the person who led them to the Trials of Blood, because whenever they went to that first entrance and it was locked or sealed or whatever, they're looking at a map, and Cloud says that he knows someone who said that you can only find the entrance if you're worthy of finding it or something like that. And that's because this Talon guy is a scholar of the First Blood, so he knew where it was, and he told Cloud that it's in Halfsgard. So Talon's the reason, which is interesting if you read book 2, because you'll meet Talon. So it's just kind of interesting that if you reread book 1, you kind of find out like Talon's the reason they're even here in the first place.
Gotcha. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, just kind of like I said, just like little tiny pieces of like foreshadowing that you don't even know are foreshadowing until you reread the whole series. And kind of everything just connects all the way from the beginning.
Cool. My last thought that I've got here, since my very last one we already talked about, since there's 2 lines that I really liked, the feather on the wind, and then you had another one similar that I really like both of them. But the one thing that kind of stuck out to me, and I don't know if you thought about this when you were writing it or not, but just like the whole like fighting underwater thing, like I was kind of reading it like, oh man, like that's got to be kind of like in slow motion, because like I think about like trying to swing a fucking sword underwater, like it ain't gonna work that good.
Somebody did mention that to me whenever they read it. They're like, this fighting underwater wouldn't work. And I'm like, well, it's gonna work. It's fiction. Physics don't apply in fiction. So that's my excuse. Physics don't work in fiction. They can do what they want.
Well, I don't think that it wouldn't work by any means. I just feel like, it's just going to be like slowed down by like 50% or something.
No.
Whatever.
They're just swinging swords like, yep, okay. It's just normal. It's a magical realm. They can do what they want.
That was definitely not my headcanon on it. I will say that. I was like, okay, it's like slow motion to like. So,
that's funny.
All right. No. I will adjust my expectations accordingly.
There's no slowing down in this magical water. They can kill these people fast.
Well, I mean, like if you're like poking them, but if you're like winding up to like slash them, I feel like maybe that's going to be a little slower. But
it probably would. Do they slash it? I thought they just jabbed everybody.
I guess I don't honestly remember, but I imagine all kinds of shit happening. Like
Yeah.
you're probably doing, like, well, you're doing everything you can to stay alive.
There's no slow motion because that's dorky. So,
No Matrix shit here.
yeah. So it might not be realistic, but I don't care.
And I don't have a problem with it. That was just like when I was reading
Yeah.
it, that's how I interpreted it. So
It's just funny because somebody else did bring that up to me. So I did when I was redoing it, when I did my second version, I fixed everything. And they did mention that to me. And I was just like, I literally kind of just said in my head what I just said to you. Like, I don't care. I'm not, it'll be fine. It's fiction. If nobody has a problem with it, I don't care. Like, it's fine.
well,
That's one of like the
okay.
minor things where like if you change it, it's worse off than if you just keep it with them fighting in slow motion. Because if I was trying to keep it realistic, it wouldn't have been really that great because they'd be fighting in slow motion. So they would have to do a lot more different things and they probably wouldn't have survived. So
Sure. Yeah, and then this last line, the sound drifted through her mind like leaves in the wind, carrying into the darkness until fading to silence. I think on this one, it was really kind of the second half of the sentence that I really liked. Just that dark and hopeless kind of thing. Guess maybe I just got a fucked up brain, but I liked that a lot.
it's like I'm like a good author or something. I don't know.
It was very
Yeah.
cinematic. Like it was absolutely cinematic. Just the way like you would envision, somebody like, floating like a leaf, as it gets pulled down and like, the light slowly fades away, and that was good.
Yeah, those two sentences really just like resonated within me. I was like, oh damn, like that's really good. I like that a lot. And both of them. So
Thank you. and book one's my worst book. So y'all are in for a treat if you keep going.
Yay.
we'll keep going.
My the one thing that I thought was cool was and maybe this is just me, but Mir picking up on Cloud's ability to apport is definitely a newer learned skill. And I'm assuming it's just kind of through observation, right?
And it's also kind of whenever they went to Havsgard or the place, where the trials were, and Avalok said these strikes are way too precise. Like there's no way someone that doesn't have magic would have been able to make these incisions. It had to be Cloud.
Right.
So you can tell just by where they are, how quick and how clean the slices are. Like it wasn't somebody who had to swim around. Like it was someone that could just teleport and slice and slice and slice.
Right. So I thought that was cool.
I do have something to say. This monster that they're fighting, I could not picture in my mind what the fuck this thing was. So the only thing that popped into my head was the fucking octopus lady from The Little Mermaid. That's what I envisioned them fighting.
Ursula?
Ursula, thank you. Yeah.
I'll have to send you a picture of what I used as inspiration for it. It's this really creepy, very insectoid looking thing in my head. Like it looks more like an insect or an alien than an actual sea creature. And it's got it's really skinny and bony and just kind of like contorted looking. I'll have to send you a picture because I looked on DeviantArt to kind of get inspiration for the creatures and stuff like that. It definitely doesn't look like Ursula from The Little Mermaid.
That was my headcanon.
So in need.
It's way more menacing than that. It's not just like a lady with octopus. I mean, yeah, tentacles. Oh my god. Well, let me see if I can find it real quick. Let's see. I don't know if I can. Well, I hope y'all are enjoying the trials at least.
So far.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading on again.
It's weird that
Well,
it's
we
like
got-
coming to a close.
It is. We've got like 6 chapters left, I think. No?
It's so sad.
And I know they'll go quick. They'll go fast.
Yeah, a lot of people, whenever they read, well, I don't want to say a lot, but I've seen some comments where they're like, the first half of the book was okay, or it kind of slogged or whatever, but they're like, but the end of the book, like the trials, they're like, it hooked me. I'm in for the long haul, which is great, because I really like built up the trials a lot, obviously, in this book. So I am really glad that it paid off because it was really hard trying to figure out how to be clever about what to do and make it different and make it feel unique, but also keep it grounded to the traditional fantasy aspects that I was trying to kind of keep it grounded to and not go too far with it. So I'm glad it is paying off.
It was a very big change just from to just suddenly be underwater but I liked it because it was unexpected. I wasn't expecting that.
Good. I mean, that's kind of what I was trying to do is like I'm still looking for the picture, by the way, if you're looking at me. I was trying to do stuff that, and I did this with the whole book really, is trying to come up with new ideas that you don't really see coming, but they still feel authentic and they still are grounded in the fantasy genre. It doesn't just feel like something I pulled out of my butt, you know? But I also wanted to play off of like fears that everybody has, like being alone in a cave, in the dark, not knowing where to go, being trapped underwater, stuff like that, that people would really feel that fear. So I try to tap into like real fears that people would have and kind of use that with Nier in the trials so they could kind of.
Oh yeah, the underwater for me for sure hit the mark because I would just say fuck it. I'm not doing that.
Same. No way. After all the stuff she's already been through, I'd be like I said, I'm too scared to walk through my house in the dark. I have smart lights, like the light bulbs that are smart, that I can just be like, Alexa, turn on the light in the hall. So it doesn't. I don't even have to flip the light switch. It's already on when I get over there. I'm a wimp.
If it was not underwater, I would be fine. If it was a cave I could walk in, I'd be fine. But I don't want to be underwater.
Yeah, being underwater, especially in a dark cave with dead people and all these other crazy things. I could not find this picture. That would make it a lot worse. But we have come to our first part of the prophecy. So let's go back. Where's it at? Oh, wait, it's not the first part of the prophecy, I don't think. It is. It is. So whenever she goes to the tree in the last chapter and she gets all of these visions and stuff, says shadows dancing across the ocean floor. Well, she's at the ocean floor right now. So it was showing her images of what she's going to have to go through. So, you know, a glowing tree standing amidst stone and underground, an abandoned underground city that's just like abandoned and forgotten, enormous monster screaming with rage, all of that seems like it's probably going to be actual images of what she's going to go through because we know now like she is on the ocean floor. So she went underwater. And in the prophecy that she said, enter the trials with great feet. The waters wait for those who seek. Darkness is blinding for those with sin. Waters are haunted by creatures within. So we've made it to one of the things in that prophecy. Waters are haunted by creatures within. So, you know, just a little tidbit, like the prophecy it comes to life throughout the trials, but I never actually like say it aloud, you know.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I saw that. As soon as I was on the like, you know, reading this chapter here, I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, I see it now. I see it. I see it.
So we'll have to keep referring back to it so that we can all see where it connects back to that prophecy that the tree gave her. Because the tree is warning her, this is what you're going to go through, and the waters are haunted by creatures, so be prepared. You're going to be underwater. You're going to have to fight things. You know, it's telling her what she's going to have to do. But obviously it's going to do it in a riddle, so she's not going to figure it out until she does it.
Right.
Don't want to make it too easy.
Right.
Oh, cool. Yeah, very good chapters. I'm excited to read on, to continue the trials. Excited to see how the hell this gets pulled off. What a massive fucking cliffhanger for sure.
Yeah.
She did.
She's
Avalok.
I don't believe that.
Well, there's a whole new cast of characters in book 2, so maybe she is, maybe she isn't.
I guess we'll find out here soon. I imagine we'll get some resolve on that pretty quickly here in the next chapter. I don't know. I wonder if like Avalok will give her his breath or something and then they go to the surface.
Yeah. They'll just have to keep breathing into her mouth. Well, when they take a breath, though, the potion runs out. So if he takes a breath, he's going to drown.
Right, but I could see him like sacrificing that for her. But if I don't know, I mean, I don't know how fucking far down underwater they are.
They're very far underwater. There's no way they can hold their breath.
And I'm assuming there's no surface either.
No, they're in a cave. So they will have to find a way to get to a surface somewhere if they can.
Oh, the mer people city's still in a cave? Okay.
Oh yeah, they're
Gotcha.
they're very far underwater.
Gotcha.
So-
Well, I guess scratch that idea. I mean, he could still give her his breath or something, and
I mean, he could definitely
I don't know.
sacrifice himself. That is a possibility.
They'll find an oxygen tank. I don't know.
So the scuba diver came down and miraculously
Scuba Steve.
Storks.
Cool.
Well, anything else, guys?
Well,
I got
good. This
nothing.
is good. I like this. Y'all's theories are really good. I like them.
We tried.
We do try. If you guys are listening, you should follow us on social media and shit on YouTube. Help us out there. I think we're getting kind of close to 200 YouTube followers.
Ooh.
And make sure you're following HC as well if you're not, because it's a lot of fun. We haven't gotten an email in a while from anybody. We like to read those when we get those. We'll usually read them on here when we get them. Feel free to send us an email, reach out, tell us some shit, whatever you want to tell us. I don't know.
You can leave comments
Related
on
or not.
You can leave comments on the YouTube video of what you theorize may happen and kind of what your theories are, and I'll also go through and read, and I can comment back to anybody.
Yeah, and I think liking the YouTube videos should help us out. I don't know how YouTube works, but algorithms and stuff. So help us out. Throw us a bone here.
Subscribing and liking the video helps a lot. It helps boost it.
Hell yeah. Do it.
We want more people to find your book and listen to us prattle on about it.
Yeah,
Right.
It's fun. It's a good book. You can trust me.
It is a good book. You wouldn't lie.
No, you can trust me. I'm the author. It's a great book. The best one in the whole world. Right there. I've never read another book in my life, so it's the best one.
It's the best book it's the best book you've ever written.
It's the best book I've ever read.
I'm offended for you now.
Hey. What? With that, I'm leaving. Goodbye.
Bye.
Rude.
Good night. Thanks for showing up. We'll see you
You
later. Talk
offended.
to you guys later.
Bye.
See ya.
DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's DMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest.